welcome to this week's edition of Halftime Talk, our weekly feature interview where we take a deeper dive into the trends impacting the global energy markets. Today, we're having a look at the chemical sector, and we're honored to be joined by Mr. Mutlaq Al-Morished, the CEO of Tasnee, one of Saudi Arabia's chemical companies. Welcome, Mutlaq.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
It's nice to see you and speak with you. It's been a while, so we're grateful to Zoom for bringing us together, and we look forward to the next time we can sit together.
Sure.
Mutlaq, we'll start with the obvious elephant in the room, so to speak. COVID has changed the world to a great extent. The global chemical industry, which was $4 trillion revenue in 2018, has seen a bit of a hit this year, obviously the first half of the year with the impact of COVID. If you would give me your kind of headlines as how this first half of the year has been disrupted by COVID.
Thank you, much appreciated. Really, to be frank and honest, we really cannot blame all our misery on the chemical industry on Corona or COVID-19. Frankly, the chemical industry have started to see quite a wide oversupply coming from the United States, chemical based on shale gas, around the mid of last year, which is mid-2019, 6 to 8 months before Corona ever was mentioned. So there was that oversupply coming, tended to disturb the pricing situation in the chemical industry. It was, I would call it an oversupply situation. It's not shortage of demand at that time. Then, of course, unfortunately, COVID came in and added to our misery. So the supply situation, which was already established with the shale gas based chemical coming from the US, added to it with COVID-19 is the reduction in demand. Mainly in the beginning from China because of their situation. But actually, to be honest, China and Asia recovered remarkably well in their demand for chemicals.
Yeah, we see industrial profits in June in China up year on year 11%, although the first half on average is down 13%.
Fully agree. So Asia in general is faring better than what we have seen in Europe or North America, for example. So the market got into already an oversupply coming with the shale gas chemical coming from the US in mid last year, and then some reduction in demand in different parts of the world. But now the situation honestly is stabilizing, and it's slightly, as you've seen, I'm sure, prices
We've been sort of through the worst of it in a way, in terms of at least up till now. The decline was sort of up till May, and then some recovery.
I agree. June we've seen a tick in prices. I mean, in our situation, most, I think, of the Gulf, Arabian Gulf producers, we were able to ship what we make, thank God. It was not a situation where you cannot deliver the molecule. You can't ship the tons. It was shipping. But the situation was price situation. Prices was dropped by 30, 40 even percent in some products. Was really
Did COVID present any opportunities? We saw SABIC adjusting its output for the opportunity with the healthcare sector, packaging. Whereas Tasnee, or did the industry as a whole adapt?
Same. You know, it's basically what we used to call the throwaway plastic, the one-time use plastic. Got huge boost from the Corona situation because people did not want to touch things twice from health reasons. So all what's been used one time, packaging, medical, of course, injection and you know, all these things. But the big demand actually is the packaging, the throwaway.
That's ongoing, obviously.
That's still continuing. It's still continuing good size because what people were saying in the past, bad plastic and waste and thrown out, blah, blah, blah. Frankly, people have to face reality. It became obvious that is the way you're going to have to deal with Corona because you don't want to have a bag that you continue using and getting contaminated. And people, as we all human, we're not really interested in cleaning every time and all that. So one-time use plastic got quite a boost. Let it be on packaging or in medical services, either one of them. However,
Plastics is a winner.
yeah, however, you, on the opposite side is the durable good, or the plastic that goes into like dryer, refrigerators, washers, and cars and planes and what have you. That took a hit on the other hand, because you know a lot of people stopped production, like China early on in March, April, a big halt in production. Europe came later, US the same. So all durable goods, in a way, took a hit. So they kind of one up and one down.
Do you think for the rest of the year, the COVID obviously is with us, it's not going away, but yet the chemicals sector out of the Middle East, out of Saudi Arabia, can still perform through the second half of the year?
I think so. I personally envision the second half from a financial point of view, taking situation, nothing will worse will get worse. I mean, you don't have another
Of
disaster.
course, but if things remain like they are,
Things being equal, exactly, I think we will see a better half than the first half for sure, because we have seen an improvement in prices. As I said, demand lifting of tonnage was not an issue. Ton was leaving. An inventory was not being built up because you can't move the tons. It was a price situation. Glycol got hit badly, while others got hit halfway and others benefited, like the one-time use plastic.
let's just talk a little bit about shale. Obviously, as you said earlier, it was a big disruptor to your industry in recent years, but now we've seen shale oil get a big hit in America. The lower oil price, of course, but what is the impact with the shale industry close or falling down in America, or at least being reduced uh, to your outlook for your industry coming out of the Middle East?
We don't see, honestly, a reduction in the gas side. Maybe there is reduction in oil, but that's not my field, really. I don't
Yeah.
oil side. But
But it comes together in shale because it's sort of co-produced.
yeah, but remember, there's a lot of fields in the US and shale that produces mostly gas, not make oil. And
Right.
some make oil, makes a lot of gas, but also they call wet field and dry field and what have you, rich and not rich. So these contracts for the chemical industry with the shale guys are 10, 15 years, 20 years contract. So there is no chemical plant I know of in the US stopped because no shale gas.
Right.
So, you know, I always laugh when somebody tell me, oh, companies are going bankrupt, market could improve. No, market actually disimprove. Because when a chemical company or shale company goes bankrupt, the tonnage doesn't leave the market. You're just changing owners. You know, one owner left, a new owner come, refinance, and what have you. And actually, the new owner hungry for cash, then they can start pumping more. And that
But it's
actually
actually now quite difficult for the US to keep exporting gas. So there's a lot more gas in the domestic market.
exactly, but they were not exporting, especially gas that goes to chemical like ethane.
Right.
Okay, they're exporting a
LNG.
lot of methane, our American friends, but the ethane export was not that huge. So there was still a lot of ethane in the fuel pool in the US, and that
Right.
ethane is being extracted. And because now the value becoming close between C1 and C2, not too much extraction beneficial, uh, but they're waiting for ethane, which naturally will be higher than methane, and they will extract more. But the bottom line, shale gas here to stay. Chemical industry that was built on shale gas and came online around the mid of last year is not closing down. It's still getting the feedstock and still producing. The question is, will be more another wave? That I doubt. I think we're reaching more of a stabilization.
So
There
the
could be
US
one
production capacity might be plateauing.
production, especially to chemical sector. That
Yeah.
goes in the chemistry part of the situation. I think we're reaching more of a settlement, maybe 1, 2 cracker every 5 years, and that's nothing. The market can absorb that easily.
Right. In terms of the U.S. economy, it seems to be struggling to find its way out of its current problem. Every country, every region of the world seems to be making some progress. The U.S., California looking like it's closing again, Texas, even though the stock markets are all booming, but the
Yeah.
main street seems to be struggling.
Well, I lived in America almost 20 years in my younger years. I never seen it like that. Really never seen it like that. I mean, again, this is an election year. So, you're going to hear a lot of BS,
Yeah,
typical election. But
sure.
amazingly, the US economy is not doing too bad. Okay, stock market is crazy. It's
Yeah,
way, way overboard. The valuation, the AP ratios, all that is totally, to me, totally unreal.
yeah,
And so forget that part. If you look at the real economy, the people who make stuff, make
yeah.
widgets, like American would say, market is not so bad. But remember, US is a big exporter of chemical. US is not, especially for us in the Gulf, GCC, it's not our big market.
No.
They, they are exporter themselves. They became
But you wouldn't
importer.
want them exporting more, given if their domestic market is
Thank you.
down.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So actually, US economy doing relatively okay is good for the rest of us because that's keeping the American products open. So the situation, frankly,
How
doesn't look.
about going forward? Speaking of the US, and of course, the other big subject we want to talk about is China. Uh, China US, I don't know, want to call it a Cold War, a face off, a trade war, whatever it is, it's growing. It seems to be getting worse. I'm wondering what you think impact it can have on the industries, chemical industry, etc.
Yeah. Well, look, when two large elephant fights in the forest, a lot of the small things get crushed in between. Unfortunately, a lot of us are among that small things who could easily get crushed if we didn't move away from these two big elephants. But I'm a believer in logic, and neither China nor the U.S. are stupid. And they have a lot of interest together. They billions involved in trade, and I think there is a lot of rhetoric going on. This rhetoric, I think some of it is also election related. And I think honestly, they're gonna reach a deal somewhere. The question is when and how much collateral damage will
But
happen. But
given the sort of outlook, at least, would it be prudent to revisit supply chains and market? Obviously, the Gulf is heavily dependent on China, from an oil point of view and from chemicals. I'm wondering, should we be thinking to be a bit more diversified?
diversified, I agree, but let's face it, you cannot diversify away from China. And come on, there is physical limits. There is the law of physics. You cannot get Africa to replace China, no matter what you're gonna do.
Yeah,
There are realities. And so I think the situation is manageable. There will be some disruption, distortion, certain parts of the supply chain, certain product versus, but it's manageable. All through this war that the two countries talked about starting when they started, the impact, frankly, on the rest of us was not so huge.
okay.
I mean, we've seen some dislocation here and there, don't get me wrong, but it was not gloom and doom. It's not the end of the world. We're not talking about subprime situation. We're not talking about a huge cycle, down, trough, down in the market we've seen in the previous years of 95, 2001 or two, and, in the late 2000s,
Yeah.
no, it's okay. It's difficult. It's bad, but it's not so bad. It's not going to
Being
kill us.
more specific about internal aspects of China market, obviously they're experiencing at the moment some significant amount of flooding that is disrupting logistics and other issues. I'm wondering, Is that impacting the chemicals industry, or how do you see that?
Not now. We have not seen anything. And a lot of these things, unfortunately, get a lot of hype and a lot of noise because of the media. And, but in reality, when you go down, you don't see a huge impact. The people somehow managed to go around them. And I remember running chemical plants when I was a young engineer. The first time you hear an accident or a fire or explosion happen in a chemical plant, you hear the worst scenarios, the gloom and dooms and all this. After a day or half a day, when you go in the plant and talk to the people, they say, yeah, it's bad, but man, not so bad. We can manage here, we can bypass this, we can do this, we can do that. So it's similar to that.
What about other markets in Asia? Obviously, there's big Indonesia, 200 million people, Vietnam, 100 million, Bangladesh, India.
Vietnam is slightly doing better. The others are more or less the same, not a huge change. India is always difficult. The Indian bureaucracy and this protectionism they're getting into with this nationalistic government they have. They're just so quick on the trigger of going anti-dumping, and every time somebody does something, some of the big player in the chemical industry in India, they have a lot of political influence, and they tend to raise all kinds of anti-dumping and all that. Unfortunately, the Indian end consumer, the consumer in India pays the price. That's a sad fact. But unfortunately, India is difficult. It's difficult and
difficult market, still big population, growing middle class.
Absolutely. But in order for them to progress and to be like another China, they're gonna have to face the music and open up and let competition and do things. If they do it the way they're doing it, they're gonna struggle as where they are for the last 30 years.
Yeah, seems to be a lot of vested interest there to keep it the way it is.
It's their call, but that's what I said. That's an interest of certain companies, certain individual at the expense of the whole society. And that's not fair.
Let's talk a little bit closer to home. Tasnee restructured its debt in recent years, short-term debt to medium to long-term. How does that look now? Obviously, this disruption that we're facing, that was a pretty good move.
Yes, of course. We thank God we did what we did. And luckily, the financial situation in Saudi Arabia and the liquidity in the financial sector, the banking sector, is quite healthy. So it's not really an issue. But having your debt, as you said, moved away from short-term, mid-term to long-term is definitely, you can breathe. You have a breathing space.
And given the availability of cheap money now, is there capital available for capex investment, for expansion,
and this is no secret. What is holding us back in Saudi Arabia is the availability of feedstock. It's a feedstock game.
Yeah.
It's not a market. It's not capital. It's not having the people to do it. It's the feedstock. And, if you're a blacksmith without coal, I don't think you're going to be much.
Why isn't there a greater emphasis in importing LNG or something? It's expensive, obviously.
LNG, LNG is not for a chemical industry. LNG is mainly for fuel, liquefied natural gas, I assume you're talking.
But it could free up domestic feedstock.
If you do chemical from LNG, it's totally uneconomical. It's too expensive.
I know, but you could free up domestic feedstock to then go into chemicals.
There is no ethane being burned or propane being burned.
Right.
So, no, in Saudi Arabia, only there is some crude in the west coast, and that's a question within Aramco. Are they better off importing LNG, burning crude, or vice versa?
So where would the potential new feedstock come from for expansion?
Two sources. I mean, Saudi Arabia did trigger its industry development the last 30 plus years by making the gas available through the master gas gathering system. It was done back in the mid 70s. It was not the price of gas at 50 cents a million BTU at that time that brought the chemical industry. What brought the chemical industry was the availability of that gas being made available. And actually, at that time, the deal, people got crude allocation to come and invest in the chemical side. At that time, I know the history. The guys did not come here at that time just for the 50 cent. They came because there was a crude allocation.
Yes.
Entitled to that, long time. So, so the gas, that gas, as like any physical commodity, has basically been spoken for. There could be some available. I don't know. Aramco has the things to it, but they could do more probably with some shale gas, some more gas. But I think the next step for Saudi, if we want to have another curve, S-curve that now we are maturing, is to have another curve, is to price naphtha competitively to the chemical industry as a feedstock to offset the logistics cost to Asia. For example, if I ship a ton of ethylene in the form of polyethylene, which is a solid 20-foot container, clean plastic line, blah, 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 to Shanghai, it's gonna cost me between 50 and 70, good days, bad days, $50, $70 a ton. If I ship a ton of naphtha from Saudi Arabia to Shanghai, I'm gonna ship it in a VLCC, crude 2 million barrel plus.
Big.
It's gonna cost me $10 to $20.
Wow.
So immediately I'm dead as to make that naphtha as chemical in Saudi Arabia. Finished.
Yeah.
So you will make that complex. If you were to build it, you will build it in Shanghai or somewhere in China, because to offset this shipping solid versus shipping liquid. So unless our system and make naphtha available to the chemical guys at a logical price, which doesn't conflict with WTO at all. Some people say, oh, WTO, that's total nonsense.
Well, you need that
so
master.
As long as it's made available for everybody, as long as it's available for everybody, for me and for Exxon or Shell or Dow or whoever, then that is your competitive advantage as a country, and WTO rules allows that. That's not an issue. So unless we price naphtha as a country in a way to encourage chemical guys to offset at least this logistic, put into your mind that Saudi Arabia, we lack a lot of time, the bilateral agreement on trade, taxes, cross taxes, the capex cost in China is cheaper. No, the American, they have the technology and they have a lot of things and they have strong financial resources. So we have a lot of things working also against us. We have few things for us, but we have a lot of things. So
others have different advantages.
You have to offset these things if we're gonna make the industry grow.
How, just looking at closing with the sort of wider view on Saudi Arabia now, sort of at the end of July, 4 or 5 months into COVID, what's the current situation, and is the country getting back on its feet?
Yeah, I think so. I think, let's face it. Again, what I say is purely Mutlaq Al-Morished opinion. It's my opinion.
Personal opinion.
I think we are like everybody else, coming to the conclusion that we're just gonna have to live with it.
Yeah.
We just cannot lock up ourselves in our homes and just hope it will just pass away. That's just, we all more or less came to the conclusion. That's just something gonna happen. So we're gonna have to take precaution, distancing, social distancing, face mask, cleaning hands. But I think ultimately we're just gonna have to live with it. I mean, that's it. It's gonna end up being like a flu, at least my humble opinion, with a little bit more severe. And it's just a price we have to pay. A lot of people die from car accident in Saudi Arabia, a heck of a lot more than anyone died from Corona. But we're scared so much of Corona while the cars are in the street like no tomorrow.
Driving away. Yeah, it's I suppose, as you say, putting in place the discipline and the process to live with all of these illnesses, cancer, COVID, everything is a long list, unfortunately.
Going back to lockdowns and stopping the economy, we all tried it. All of us human on the face of this earth except with, I think, I don't know any country that really did it, but even if you didn't, your neighbors did. So you could not even go to your neighbor. So we tried it. Frankly, it was good for a while, but then the economy will just die. And we just cannot. You know, who's going to plant a farm and who's going to run the medical facility to produce medicine? We just cannot. You know,
well, hopefully the oil price has recovered reasonably from where it was, and that gives a foundation.
You know, oil prices, basically, you know, it's a lot of the molecule of the oil goes into the transport sector. The minute you lock people down, their car sitting in the garage, you ain't gonna have any much. So I think now things slowly going back to semi-normal or normal. I'm sure the energy sector in general is gonna see.
Well, you're going to see, I would imagine, some of those molecules moving more to the petrochemical space over time.
Some, but still, you know, it's a yield game. Any chemist or physicist can tell you, you know, it's a yield game. Give me a molecule of ethane and I will beat anybody with his naphtha. Maybe for a short period he can beat you, but forget it. The yield from ethane to ethylene is 1.3. You can't get that in any other molecule.
So just wrapping up, your sort of crystal ball outlook for the rest of the year?
I think it's positive. I think, like we talked earlier, as things being equal, I think it's positive. People, like we said, getting used to Corona, living with Corona. People are out driving, having holidays, beaches in Spain and Italy. Another thing, I was watching TV the other day. You see people going, people flying again. Not much, but they are now doing it. So I think it's positive because we need GDP. Chemical industry is really live and die by GDP. So the minute GDP starts to move, we are moving, and it is starting to move now, and that's why you see increase in prices started in June.
Well, it certainly will be interesting. Certainly will be interesting to see where the China GDP ends up at the end of the year. First half it was negative 1.6. It will be, you know, it's unheard of. But I would suspect by the end of the year we might end up in positive figures, and that will give some optimism for 21. Listen, Mutlaq Al-Morished, CEO of Tasnee, thank you so much for joining us on this week's Halftime Talk. It's great to, as always, get your frank and precise insights on the chemical sector and the wider industrial space. So thank you.
Thank you. Wishing you a safe things and wishing Eid Mubarak to all the.
Absolutely. Eid Mubarak to you and your family.